WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I am J.W. Simmons. We appreciate you being with us this week and allowing us to have part of your time to talk about important information and maybe some things you can use in the future. I thank you for your comments and continued input to weshouldknow.edu@gmail.com. You send us your comments. We appreciate that. We also use those to kind of evaluate where we're going with the next shows. Those kinds of things is always beneficial. Always remember the snail mail or the post office box is 1482 Clinton, North Carolina. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're talking today about holiday safety, issues that you may be confronted with, hopefully not, but a person that has seen quite a few of those things on the roads right here in the area and in the state is Sergeant Kevin Pearson. Sergeant Pearson, thank you for being with us. Yes, thank you for taking time. I don't know, it might be a break for you to get off the road for a minute to come in and talk to us. Kevin, I've, of course, known you from since a small child. Many people probably are listening or watching this show goes, well, there's Kevin. Well, the good thing about that is that you resonate with this area. You've been with the Highway Patrol now over 20 years. You've completed your master's degree. As we were talking before the show came on the air, law enforcement has really evolved because now we have a very high-skilled, high-academically qualified, well-trained folks that is out there looking after us. What give you this motivation? I mean, was there one stirring moment that said, I want to do this and I want to be with the North Carolina Highway Patrol?
Actually, from a small child, my interaction with other troopers. One trooper in particular, he's now retired, Trooper Webb Brown. Back in the day when I was a lot younger, Dukes of Hazzard was a popular TV show. And I thought I was Bo Duke. So my grandfather bought me a go-kart. You don't see many go-karts around anymore, but I had a go-kart, and there was still some dirt roads left back in those days, and I'd drive my go-kart up down the dirt roads doing donuts like I was on the General Lee. And I've done it several times before. Trooper Brown comes by, Webb Brown, and I go through a path through a bean field back to my barn, and he pulls up in my driveway as I'm pushing the go-kart in the barn, and he catches me. He was very polite to me, well, as much as he could be for me doing wrong. I think he actually thought I was running from him, but he didn't know there was a path there. I was not trying to run from him, and the way he treated me just left an impression on me, and I thought to myself, well, that's what I want to do. So and here I am.
Well, you know, it's interesting you mention that. I know Webb Brown, and I knew him when he was on the patrol here. He's always been a man of respect. He's always been a person that got respect because he gave respect.
Absolutely.
So, Webb, we're talking about you today, so we're going to consider this our Christmas card to Webb Brown. How about that?
That's correct. That's a good one.
So you ended up with Highway Patrol, now, and in that process, it was a learning experience because you didn't move from already a law enforcement agency to the Highway Patrol. You went in with the idea of being a trooper, is that correct?
I did. When I was in college at East Carolina doing my undergrad, I did an internship at Clinton Police Department. Matter of fact, Captain Eric Pope with the Sheriff's Office now was the sergeant over the internship program at the police department. The police department then was run by Chief Marshall Evans, a retired SBI agent. So I looked at that side, and you know, they tried to persuade me, why don't you come be a police officer? But I still had the Highway Patrol in my mind. There was no one going to change that. So I did that, and when I graduated college, got me a job as I was going through the Highway Patrol process, got me a job at the 911 Communications Center. Now, they knew I was going through the Highway Patrol, so they would not hire me full-time, but I worked part-time on a full-time basis. And then 9/11 happened. And there was a job freeze for the Highway Patrol. So I worked there for about a year and a half until the job freeze was released and they started hiring people. So everybody was in shock on 9/11. They just didn't know what was about to take place. So I come and started school in 2002, June 1st, 2002 to be exact.
Well, it seems to me that the job for North Carolina Highway Patrol, one of over 1,500 in the state now, over 78,000 miles of road, second only to the state of Texas.
That's correct.
It is an unbelievable job in the sense of what the expectation is it not?
It is, especially, you know, when I come on the highway patrol in 2002, we absorbed the motor care enforcement section of the DMV. Since then, that's the only growth we've had. I mean, North Carolina, since the year 2000, has grown 2.5 million people to now. We've really not grown other than that when we absorbed the DMV's enforcement section. And we're understaffed right now. Right now, we are counting supervisory roles, we're 191 people short on the patrol. And we're running 3 schools next year, and that's just going to help us keep up with the rate of attrition. So it's a challenge, yes, sir.
Well, and to that point, you're constantly looking for that right person that has the skill set, the mindset, the capacity and capability to be a trooper. How does a person go about that? Somebody's listening to the show today, maybe they're just got out of high school, maybe they are 20 or they've been doing other jobs and they thought, you know, I'd like to do that. Is there a process?
Talk to a trooper. Talk to a trooper. You know, when I was younger, we didn't have a YouTube, but that was fairly, well, they had it, but it was fairly new. It hadn't took off yet. You can look on YouTube and Highway Patrol. There's a lot of videos out there, but the best thing to do is talk to a trooper. I mean, we'd love to talk to you. Mm-hmm. We're all recruiters. We have a recruiting section with the Highway Patrol, but at the end of the day, every one of us are recruiters. We want to get the right people.
And it's a fit for some people. It is not a fit for others. They need to know that going in. Correct?
Yes, we are a paramilitary organization, and we're going to keep the people we want. But that takes care of itself in the basic school about 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm. So when we say paramilitary, it's kind of a quasi boot camp kind of thing to get in, but there's a lot of testing academically going in as well. I mean, you have to go through various tests before you even get to that.
There is. It takes about 6 months just to get to the school. Physical assessments, written assessments, psychological assessments. It's a long, drawn-out process. So there again, you've got to want to do it. It's not going to be handed to you. You've got to want to be there.
You know, we've got a lot of troopers that have come to this area, and after retiring, they're still here. Of course, David King was from this area to start with, and I always enjoy talking to David. And I look around and I miss that camaraderie that I used to have when I was involved in the area of law enforcement. Sometimes I miss that, and it's something that grows on you. Do you think that's a part of what not only attracts people but causes folks to stick out and stay with the patrol for 20 plus years like you have?
Absolutely, absolutely. I know people that's retired on the Highway Patrol that here when I got here in 2002. There's been a big paradigm shift with the Highway Patrol as far as moving people around. Now, you were not going back home within 10 years. Now it just makes sense. If there's an opening, why not send somebody back to their home county? Because you ain't got to worry about moving that people and the expenses related to moving that person. I'm a prime example. I came back home right out of patrol school because there was 2 openings. Luckily, I was the only person in patrol school from Sansom County and the only one that wanted to come back. So I was stationed here, and I was here up until the time I got promoted. So you got to have that contact with the community. That's essential. You know, the big push now is for community policing. We discussed this earlier. We've been doing community policing forever. Mm-hmm. It's just what context you call community policing. Mm-hmm. We do community policing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's important for folks to understand is the approachability of the patrol. Oftentimes folks may feel like, well, I don't want to go over there and talk to them. I'm afraid they might ask me for something I don't have, or I might get in trouble. But that's not what. Just kind of give us a brief on what you see your role as a trooper, particularly now as a sergeant.
Yeah, well, number one, I'm a community servant. I'm here to serve the public. We want to talk to people. We love that interaction with people. We're not out here just to investigate wrecks and write tickets. We love to give people information, give them advice on what to do to not get a ticket, to not get in a wreck. So our interaction with people is vital. We love that.
Do you have to get kind of used to the reality that oftentimes in people's lives that you engage at some of the worst moments in their lives, as you just mentioned, traffic accidents, situations that it's just not a good situation?
Well, you learn real quick how to deal with people. Just what I do, I try to put myself in their position, separate myself from a law enforcement officer. I'm a person. If it was my parent, my sibling, or something like that, what would I want? How would I want that officer to handle this situation? Mm-hmm. That's how you got to look at it. You got to put it in perspective for that person, and that's always the best way to deal with it.
Well, as we kind of, we're going to go to break here in about 2 minutes, but I'm going to kind of set this up so folks can be prepared and make sure they tune in or call a friend. But I want to come back from break and talk a bit about some of those traffic accident issues, some of the things during the holiday season specifically that you're confronted with. And Kevin, I know there's things out there that you hope you never see again.
Absolutely.
But in the job you're in, you carry that with you, do you not?
You try not to, but you will. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. You can't displace yourself from some of the things. You can't unsee some of the things you've seen, and I've seen my fair share. And as a parent, when you see a child, you'll never a child that's killed in a collision, you'll never forget that.
Do you think things are escalating more in our environment as far as negativity and this kind of sense of tribalism?
Yes, I do a little, but to be honest with you, as a supervisor now, I'm not on the road as much as I used to be, so I don't get to see it as much as I would like. I would like to be able to put it in perspective from my context and see firsthand. And that's one thing about being a supervisor. You kind of lose touch of, not, I won't say reality, but of the ins and outs of being on the road every day.
And the level of frustration seemed like goes up during the holidays in the sense of the ability of people to have patience to deal with certain things.
There is. Patience is a commodity these days. So with that being said, I mean, you got to have patience in these holidays. You got to prepare, and most essentially you have to plan. You have to plan.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about some of those things that you have seen that folks need to be aware of and understand the tragedy sometimes by the inaction on their part. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Sergeant Kevin Pearson with the North Carolina Highway Patrol Station right here in Clinton, North Carolina. Many of you know Kevin. Stay tuned. Call a friend.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We should know it's on air if you're just tuning in. You're driving down the road to listen to us on the radio, WCLN. Also, Star Communications Channel 16 is kind of our home for development and putting forth these shows each and every week. And I want to thank the City of Clinton and City Manager Tom Hart for allowing us to use the City Hall Auditorium here. Since the flood last year and the displacement of a number of Star Communication office and personnel, we have had the good fortune of being right here in the City Hall. Clinton City Hall, and we thank them for that. We're talking about issues during the holidays, particularly as it relates to safety, as people go from one point to the other. The North Carolina Highway Patrol is heavily involved in enforcing the state's traffic laws. Troopers look at traffic. They deal with situations, everything from hurricanes to hazardous chemicals. We're talking with Sergeant Kevin Pearson. Kevin, you're from this area. You know a lot of people. What do you say to people today as they're looking at you on this camera and listening to you? And it's Christmas time, and as usual, we get off on these binges of a party at somebody's house, or we have a gathering of friends over here, but then we got to get home. I don't know that there's Ubers in Sampson County, but help us understand how important it is to take those things in perspective.
Number one, planning is essential. I'm a planner, always have been. You have to plan. If you're going to do this, then you can't do that. If you're drinking, don't drive. Plain and simple. If you're taking medication that says do not operate heavy machinery, well, a car is a heavy machinery, so do not drive. Have a friend, phone a friend, call somebody. Just don't operate that car while you're impaired. Because if you think, well, I'm not drunk, I'm just buzzed. Well, really, you're appreciably impaired, which is you're impaired. So don't operate that vehicle, because the consequences that can come out of that are tragic. You always keep that in mind.
We notice a lot during this time of year, people are very stressed too, trying to get that last present or making sure they've got the list covered or getting something done related to Christmas. And you see people on their devices. Those cell phones are tremendously built into our DNA. What's some of the big things you're seeing with cell phone use?
Well, I see a lot more off-duty than I do on-duty, of course, because when you're driving that black and silver car, you tend to stick out.
Right.
Everybody's on their cell phone, whether it's talking on the cell phone or texting on their cell phone, playing video games on their cell phone, they're still on their cell phone. AAA did a study years ago that said even talking on the phone, not texting, just talking on the phone, you're just as impaired mentally as an impaired driver on alcohol. Now, if you're texting on the phone, my opinion, this is coming from Kevin, not the Highway Patrol, you're more impaired. Mm-hmm. I see numerous collisions, mostly rear enders, where people are not paying attention. They're looking at their cell phone. They're not going to tell us that, and that's very hard to prove. But at the end of the day, I feel like that's what it is, especially when they have a cell phone sitting right beside them. Cell phones have their purpose, and they're a great tool, but they are a hindrance also, especially when you're driving.
Do you see that becoming more and more involved in traffic as the generation that is kind of what I call the technology generation comes to fruition now? They just literally live by that. And you mentioned conversation. Most of the time they don't have a conversation. It's text back and forth, or it's Instagram, or it's something.
Yeah, it is. Everybody relies on their cell phone, and I'm guilty too. I mean, if I lose my cell phone, I can't remember people's phone numbers anymore. I rely on that cell phone, and I think that's everybody, not just the younger generations. That's a lot of people. We've become a dependent on cell phone population, and that's unfortunate. It has destroyed our many communication skills, especially with the youth. Me and you, we didn't have cell phones early on, so I mean, we try to talk to people.
We know the difference.
We know the difference, but that's all they know. And that's very unfortunate, especially when it comes time to get into the working world.
When you talk to folks, and I know you're a very open person and can communicate with people well, what are some of the things that people look at you and say, well, can I do this? Or if I do this and I'm caught, am I in trouble? Or maybe I had this problem, and is this something that's real bad, or is it, I guess for us we would say, a misdemeanor or a felony, that kind of thing, but for them, they just want to know how bad a trouble they're in. Do you ever get that question? How bad a trouble?
Well, that's not, yes I do, but that's not for me to decide. We enforce the law, so if the law says this, you better stick within that boundary. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as what's going to happen to you after the fact, that's for the courts. That's the courts. I have nothing to do with that. I can tell them what I've seen in the past, but really and truly, that's irrelevant for their particular case.
And it could be up to that court. One of the things I often ask, folks in your position or others that come in, is to talk a bit about what the expectation is that you want people to have when that blue light comes on behind them and they're driving down the road. And most folks, when it happens, some people know if they're speeding, or if they've 9 times out of 10 they probably know. Well, I know I just did this. And sometimes you have the folks that go, well, I really don't know what I've done. So what do you want them to be thinking about when that happens?
Well, if a North Carolina State Trooper stops you, I say 99.9% of the times, you always have that fraction of people that don't do what they're supposed to do, members don't do what they're supposed to do, because there's always a bad apple in the bunch. Mm-hmm. With that being said, first off, we want you to pull over to the right shoulder of the road, mm-hmm. or a safe area. Mm-hmm. If you cannot pull over to a safe area, turn your emergency flashers on and continue on till you can. But maintain your speed, or at least decrease your speed. First thing we want you to do is stop. And like I say, most of the time, more times than not, the whole stop's going to be recorded. And we're going to tell you why we stopped you. And then we're going to take the appropriate action. It may be a written warning, it may be a verbal warning, or it may be a citation. And we're going to explain to you when your court date is, and what you can do, what your options are. However, we're not attorneys. We're not going to give you any legal advice, mm-hmm. and we're not going to have court beside the roadway. That's what court's for. We don't do that. Number one, it's a safety issue. We don't have time to have court on a busy highway. That's not safe for me. It's not safe for the violator.
Let's talk about another matter too that often comes up. Folks will say, well, When do I press star HP? When is the appropriate time? What should I feel or what should I see going on if I decide, before I decide to press star HP on my phone, which connects you with the North Carolina Highway Patrol, whatever district office that is?
Well, if you see something don't look right, I always say let somebody know. We'll be the judge of whether it's right or not, or if there's a law being committed, we'll do that. Star HP, 911, either way. If you want Highway Patrol, you can call 911. They'll transfer the call to Highway Patrol. But if you specifically want Highway Patrol, Star HP. And there's no boundary of what you can or cannot call us. We are public servants. So if you need us, call us.
A lot of folks look at the Highway Patrol not only as being the statewide law enforcement agency, but they look at the Highway Patrol as being kind of aggressive in the sense of getting there, of being more dominant in the situation, because they do have statewide authority. They do have statewide capacity. Just recently, some folks may have noticed this on the news. In an adjoining county, someone called in an aggressive driver situation in which a gun was involved. They called into 911, but it was in that county. It left that county. The call ended up getting transferred. Long into the story, it got really convoluted. Would they be better if they're on the roads and something like that happened just to go straight to Highway Patrol?
You can. However, most troopers monitor all radio traffic. Like I monitor radio traffic in Cumberland County, Sampson County, any surrounding county.
So it's local law enforcement traffic?
Yes, we do. We monitor all that, and we don't necessarily have to get a call from our communication center to get involved. Ideally, that's the way we like it, but if we're going to assist, we're going to assist ever how we can. Especially a situation like that, we need to get that person stopped or get them off the road. If they're waving a gun at somebody, that's a bad situation. That's unsafe.
With that said, are you seeing more of those kinds of aggressive actions today than, say, 10 years ago in your career?
I would say yes, only because it's being reported, because people have the ability to report things with cell phones. I'm sure it's been going on a long time, but people didn't think much of it or didn't report it, or maybe they report it after the fact. But now it's more real time. So yes, we stop people like that more than you think.
We talked a little bit about, Kevin, you mentioned a while ago the number of troopers that we've got in this county. And I guess rural surrounding counties are pretty much the same as far as the number of folks and allocation of resources. Is it concerning for you as a sergeant to have less men now than, or less people now? I better back up because I'm going to get called out by using the word men. Less people now than we did some years ago.
Well, actually, our numbers, when I come on Highway Patrol in 2002, we accumulated over 300 officers from the Motor Carrier Division of the DMV Enforcement Section. Now, since 2010, we've grown to about another 1 million people. In 2000, the census of North Carolina was 8.5 million people, and now it's 10.5. And other than the expansion of adopting the DMV or absorbing the DMV law enforcement section, we've really not grown. And we won't, because the problem is right now what we're seeing is we cannot recruit enough people to fill the vacancies we have. And it's not just Highway Patrol, it's every law enforcement officer. It's every law enforcement agency, excuse me. But people just, they don't want to work in law enforcement anymore. Now some do, and God bless them, but a lot of people just don't want to do it anymore. And that's the battle we face.
It's a kind of one of those situations that people see. I think a lot of what you guys go through and what officers are expected of. And now, as you mentioned a while ago, we were talking a little bit about technology. Technology now is like you're always on somebody's camera. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you're having chicken soup at a restaurant or whether you're walking to your car. It's almost like you're, and I hate to use this word, but sometimes it's like you're stalked.
Yeah, but I tell people, just do what you would do normally. If you're an ethical, moral person, you're fine.
Exactly.
I mean, don't worry about what the camera's going to show. The camera's going to show you what's going on.
Because you could easily get paranoid yourself.
Yeah, that's correct. I just do the same thing. I tell people, just do what you're going to do. Just be yourself.
We're going to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Sergeant Kevin Pearson. We're talking about some of the nuances of the North Carolina Highway Patrol. We will be back in a moment. Call a friend, stay tuned, and we're going to talk about some more issues facing the holidays.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that has a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to ask you to call a friend and stay tuned. We're talking about safety issues. We're talking about things that you may or may not be confronted with during the holiday season. Certainly, we pray that you do not get involved in traffic accidents and have to engage personally in something of that nature. Unfortunately, we see a lot of those during the holiday season. We're talking with Sergeant Kevin Pearson with the North Carolina Highway Patrol, stationed right here in Clinton, North Carolina, from Sampson County. Grew up in the area. Kevin, thank you for being with us today.
Yes, sir.
Okay, want to try to get into some of these issues. Alcohol and, as you pointed out earlier, substance abuse, that kind of thing. When it gets behind the wheel of a vehicle, you see many times tragedy. It impairs judgment, those kinds of things. What is people in your planning process, and you're a big planner, so in your planning process, they're going somewhere and they know it's a party and they know there's going to be alcohol served. Their mindset has got to be strong enough to either, number one, are you saying stay away from the alcohol, or have a predetermined safe way to get home or to a hotel? Does people just simply overlook that and say, well, I'm not going to do that, and then they get there and they do it, and then all of a sudden they hadn't made a plan?
I think people have the perception of what they're going to do, but things change. It's always revolving. Whether they say, well, I'm going to go to the party, but I'm not going to drink. They see a friend there, and they maybe have one beer, and one turns into 2, 3, 4, and there you go. And then they're stuck. Always plan. Plan for the worst, hope for the best. That's what I recommend. I always have a plan out there to get home. Whether you plan on drinking or not, just have a safety net.
When somebody takes that first, says a glass of wine maybe or something, or some alcohol, they drink that and they say, well, I only had one, or I've only had 2, or what have you, and then all of a sudden they decide, well, that's not enough to impair me. They get in a car and they drive, and somebody, you or somebody in your organization, stops them. They oftentimes will smell the odor of alcohol. They'll see something. They had a reason to stop them, as you pointed out earlier, to start with. Folks have to understand that, and this is, again, my opinion, there is not a limit. If you're going to consume, you just don't need to get behind the wheel of a car.
Well, the black and white letter of the law, there is a limit. It's 0.08. However, you can be a 0.05 or 0.04 and be impaired. If the average person can look at you and notice some kind of impairment, well, that's appreciable. That means it's noticeable. It's impairment. And the courts convict people quite a bit more than the public actually realizes at a 0.04, 5, and 6, even though it's not 0.08. 0.08 is just presumed guilty. That's what that is.
And it's important, too, I think, for folks to understand that the reason that it's important for that person to not be on the road is because your action in stopping them, yours or another trooper or another law enforcement officer in the area, they may have just saved some member's family's life because of that person all of a sudden going across the line, running. We've seen that too many times, have we not?
That's correct, and unfortunately, we can't predict the unknown, or we can't say for sure what might have been. Chances are the person that's impaired that you stop, or a trooper stops, was going to kill somebody or injure themselves. But that's just, we operate a lot in the unknown. We try to prevent worst case scenarios.
But we know those two ingredients don't work well together.
No, they do not. No.
And by removing one of those, you've actually made a significant possibility that well person may get home that night.
That's correct.
So when we look at it from a rural population versus an urban population, based on numbers, is it pretty much the same as far as numbers of people? I know a lot of times, traffic stops are done with the highway patrol unit or what have you, where you have a number of vehicles stopped. Sometimes it's done in metropolitan areas. You see a lot of numbers of folks that were arrested. In rural areas, you get a lot of numbers, but is it pretty much, I guess what I'm asking is is it based on the volume of people that live in that area, not necessarily one area has more than others?
Well, we tend to see more volumes of impaired drivers during the holidays. People are on the road more, they're celebrating, partying more. We do a lot more checkpoints during the holidays. Matter of fact, a lot of times we get the Booze It and Lose It, the Batmobile from Raleigh down here, and we set it up at strategic points where the high alcohol crashes are involved throughout the year. That's where we usually set up.
And you know those statistics, so you look at the numbers, you know where the numbers are saying there needs to be some intervention, and there's where you go.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And it's not announced.
It's not announced, no.
So with that, you mentioned the unit that comes down and does that. The other thing the Highway Patrol has that is important that folks need to understand is you have a great amount of resources that a lot of folks in the area, especially local agencies, would never have access to simply because the local economy could not afford to do it. One of those is helicopters.
Yeah, we do. We don't use the helicopters very much in these campaigns. They have their own specific uses, usually around the urban areas, North Carolina. We rely on our partnerships here in Sampson County, Sheriff's Department, Clinton PD, Newton Grove PD. We actually invite them to all our checkpoints during the holidays, and we have a great working relationship with those guys, men and women. So.
That's almost essential, though.
It is. Any county, any organization, yes, it's essential, absolutely.
Now, we mentioned earlier that the Highway Patrol is not a state police force. It is a unique entity within itself. But the fact that we don't have a, quote, state police department, like a lot of people have state police officers, you kind of cover that role as well. You cover that in other roles, but you fill that void for if there weren't a need for one, you fill that void.
Yeah. Well, we were trained actually by the Pennsylvania State Police years ago, and we were incorporated just for the simple fact to assist these local municipalities and sheriff's office, which in those days actually did collisions. And as the public and automobiles grew on the road and we had more roads on the highway, we actually grew with it. But we still have a strong partnership with those municipalities. We work together great. We couldn't do what we do without them.
Something that always frustrates people, and I know a lot of times I'll have people to either text, email, or they'll send me somewhere and they say, I heard your show, I was sitting waiting to pick up my grandchildren at school, or I was driving down the road, and they'll always ask questions that relate to children. Let's talk about, little Susie or Freddie or Johnny in that vehicle, and they pick them up at school, and oh well, I forgot that car seat. What are you looking for as far as, let's just first of all talk about violation. What is a violation, and what does that consist of? In what point in time should a parent or a grandparent say, well, I didn't get the car seat, I don't want to do anything?
Well, each car seat goes through strenuous tests before they're put out on the market. And I tell people, just read your manual. The manual in those car seats, they're not going to read you wrong. Now, the laws, that's the bare minimum. That's what you have to do. And I tell people, I was like, if you will put full faith effort, you're not going to get a citation. Just make an effort. Hey, come by the office. Come by the fire department, Clinton Police, Sheriff's Office. Somebody's going to show you how to install that car seat correctly. But I ask them, how valuable is that child to you? I hope it's worth your life, because mine's worth my life. So do everything within your power to make sure that child seat's in that car correctly, and that child's in that car. Train that child to stay in that car seat. Now, there's several times we stop people, well, little Johnny won't stay in his car seat. Well, you need to discipline that child to make them and let them realize how important it is to stay in that child's seat, because they save lives. Now, I've been to wrecks before where car seats were improperly put in and that child got killed. And it don't take but one or two of those. You don't want to see that anymore. So it plays on my heartstrings with children. Children are very important to me.
Kevin, there's certain weight and height and age things that also are as part of that statute. Talk about that a bit so folks can kind of get an idea at what point in time is that person now to a point that they can actually sit in the seat of a vehicle with a shoulder and lap strap on and be safe?
Well, let me back up a little bit on this. The biggest question we get is mothers call, when can I turn my child around? Just that rear facing.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, and people that make these car seats and safe kids, they'll tell you, we would all be safer if we could be in the back seat rear facing.
Yeah. No matter what age, probably. Yeah.
Their first year they need to be rear facing.
Yeah.
But when they start getting too big for that car seat and their legs are hitting the back seat, you need to turn them around. And it's not because you can see how cute your child is. We know the child's cute, but it's safe. It's safety. Like I say, rear facing is always good for a small infant, but when they grow beyond that, you need to turn them around and put them in the appropriate child seat with the 5-point harness. They do have to stay in some type of a child seat up until they're 8 years old or 80 pounds. That point in time, they can be before then they need to be in a booster seat. But once you get to, you're big enough, you've outgrown that, and you're above 90 pounds, you're good. You can be in a lap belt.
Just regular adult seat, yeah.
Yeah, but you have to have the airbag off if they're in the front seat.
A lot of folks will ask the question also, if I'm in the back seat, do I have to buckle up?
Absolutely. As of about 3 or 4 years ago, you do.
And there's certain year model vehicles that there's some requirements that the difference if it's something back 70 or 71.
Some vehicles, when they were manufactured, didn't have rear seat belts. If they don't have it, then you're exempt from that. But if they have seat belts, you do have to wear them.
And I think that's important. And again, you get back at it, you always have folks who go, well, I remember standing up in the back of a pickup. Well, I do too, but I also remember by the grace of God I'm here at the same time. So.
Absolutely. I remember sleeping in the back deck of a car, my parents' car, but them days are over. And we're a lot more educated now than we were then. So.
Absolutely. When we come back, I want to kind of drill in a bit more on some of the safety issues that you see and you hear from people on as we get into our next segment. So, folks, we're going to ask you to stay tuned. I want to give you a moment to call some friends. We're going to take a break, and as we come back with Sergeant Kevin Pearson, we're going to give you some information about some things that he has seen and some questions that has been asked them and some observations that might just keep you a little bit safer during the holiday season. We'll be back in a moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. We're coming to you from Star Communications, Channel 16, covering several counties here in the eastern part of the state, also uploaded to YouTube. So you go on YouTube, pull up her show, and look at some past shows, look at shows that maybe you missed, or somebody was our guest and you wanted to see some comments or commentary that he or she made. You can pull us up there at any time. Gives you hopefully a treasure trove of information you need. We're talking about holiday safety issues, particularly as it relates to on the road and moving from point A to point B. Nobody knows more about that than the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and Sergeant Kevin Pearson is with us. Kevin has come back to the last segment. I want to kind of just take a quick moment and give a salute and a shout out to all of those folks that serve in law enforcement and law enforcement capacity in the sound of my voice, and express my deep appreciation for what they do and for dedicating their life to serving other people. So with that said, and I know you join me in that, with that said, let's talk about those issues that relate particularly to driving during the holidays and some of the things that folks see. Many areas can be covered, whether it's commercial vehicles, whether it's trucks, whatever the kind of vehicle. I thought it was a perfect opening that you gave when you were operating your golf cart and being a Hollywood movie star, and all of a sudden Webb Brown had to correct you on that. That's so in a rural area, you probably see a lot more of that than you do in some major urban areas.
Absolutely, you do. Being in an urban area, you're kind of contained, because we don't work much in the urban areas. No, we go in there and we do our community policing, visit schools, because that's a big thing. School safety is huge. We visit schools, but we don't work much in urban areas, and they're kind of contained to the municipality police departments. But you're right, in a rural county you can see a lot of things.
And that said, everything from substance abuse, you know, we're doing a lot of stuff now and trying to educate people about opioid addiction and those kinds of things. Do you see a lot of transportation issues here? I know the Highway Patrol works the interstates very aggressively. Of course, local law enforcement is doing that now as well. But do you see a lot of concerns and a lot of accidents and other things related to things that are beyond alcohol use?
As a society, we are over-medicated. You're talking about opioids. Well, yes, we're over-medicated society now. People take medications and drive when they know or should have known they shouldn't have been driving, and next thing you know, they're in a collision and they're on life support. And we test their blood because we have suspicion they're on some kind of impairment. When you see all these pill bottles and stuff, we usually draw their blood. If there's a fatal involving anyone, we're going to draw blood. And 9 times out of 10, it comes back positive. And the person didn't even know that they can't be driving and taking those medications. Either there's some kind of addiction there. So yes, controlled substances, these prescription medications, that's a huge problem we have right now.
We mentioned earlier and didn't get into it that much, but equipment and different kinds of things that's on vehicles now, whether it's tinted windows, whether it's lighting, that kind of thing. A vehicle has to go through inspections periodically, and oftentimes that's designed to kind of catch some of these things and say, hey, you're going to need to remove that. That's, Chapter 20 motor vehicle laws prevent you from doing that. But quite often we also see it when it doesn't prevail. So do you have times that you see vehicles that you feel compelled, you got to stop and say to this person, look, this is not the kind of thing that you can do. It's not legal.
We do, and 9 times out of 10, that ends it. However, as far as the tent violations, what happens is they get their car inspected, then they'll put the tent back on, and when their inspection's coming up again, they'll take it off. And I don't know how much money they have to spend on it, but it's costing a lot of money. It's costing somebody a lot of money, but they take that equipment off to get it inspected and put it right back on. So that's the battle we deal with. These bright lights, there's certain laws on how many lights you can have on vehicles. And sometimes people have tendencies to exceed that, and it causes a hazard for oncoming traffic, especially these bright LED light bars. So my advice, don't have those on your car, because if I have my light bar on shining in your eyes, you're probably not going to be able to see.
Yeah, especially if you're meeting a vehicle.
Exactly.
You might just collide with the next one that you meet.
Right.
So when we talk about these things and there's a concern, the Highway Patrol telephone number's published, it's out there. Can folks call the North Carolina Highway Patrol? Do you recommend if they've got a question, should they call the Clinton office and say, hey, whoever answers, it's secretary or whoever, say, can you tell somebody I'm trying to find information about A, B, C, or D?
Just call the Clinton office, 910-592-3141. If one of the troopers or any sergeants are not in the office, the secretary, Miss Sherry, will take your call and somebody will return your call and we'll answer your question. If we don't know, we'll find somebody that does know.
Yeah, and Sherry's good at doing that, relaying a message or getting it to anybody. In fact, you've got a long history of great folks working with Patrol.
Absolutely.
You must vet those like you do to troopers as well.
We do.
So when they call that number, they'll get a person that works there, and you just simply say, I'm planning to put so-and-so on my car, or I've decided I want to take the back seat out. I mean, folks in rural area where we live, Kevin, are very creative people. So they come up with all these ideas, and it looks good as long as we're on our woods path somewhere behind our house. But if it hits the road, it could be a severe problem. So they can ask questions about that, I guess.
You can ask questions and seek advice. However, I say we're in the technology age. You can find a lot by using Google.
That's right.
But make sure that you vet that information source. Make sure it's from North Carolina General Statutes, because it spells out what you can and cannot do. Don't go to these personal websites, because they may feed you junk.
You see a lot of indicators now, and I'm not necessarily tossing any particular city under the bus, but some in the Triangle where there's a lot of shootings. There's a lot of issues with guns and deadly weapons and those kinds of things. How does that make you feel as a trooper when you start seeing an escalation of deadly force as you're out there? And many times, you guys are absolutely right by yourself on the road at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. There might be nobody else out there unless it's a municipality somewhere.
Well, number one, the trooper's mindset should be his safety is number one. The violator is number two. And the public's going to be close to that. It's going to be tied with number two. With that being said, we are trained to neutralize situations. So if there's a threat, we're going to neutralize that threat. And what do I say by neutralize? I mean, that's exactly what I mean, neutralize, stop the threat.
One way or the other.
One way or another. Now, we would like to do it diplomatically and talk and de-escalate the situation, talk people down, but sometimes, unfortunately, it does not end that way. Most time it does, but sometimes it just don't end that way, and that's unfortunate.
Some time back there was a rumor, you know how rumors get put out. It's easy,
Yes.
Everything from the barbershop to the beauty shop,
That's
what I tell
correct.
people. But it's rumors get put out, well, if you speed, if you go so fast, then they'll quit chasing you. Well, that was something that was talked about in urban areas in which if a car was going through a school zone or something, some local police departments would say disengage. But folks need to understand that ultimately that gives you guys the signal that somebody has a serious issue if they're willing to speed to elude arrest. There's something more than that traffic situation, is there not?
That's
typically?
correct. And many agencies now, especially now, have no chase policies. The Highway Patrol, rest assured, we have a chase policy. Now we have to look at the pros and cons, and that's a hard thing to do in a split second to sit and make a split second decision. Troopers, we have to, when they call, they're involved in a chase. We have to, me as a supervisor and first sergeant, we have to monitor that chase, and we have to make decisions based on what that particular trooper's telling us on the radio. Number one is traffic conditions, the time of day. For example, we're not going to be chasing a car in a school zone.
Right.
We're just not going to do that.
Right.
Number one, it's high liability. Number two, that creates a tremendous hazard for everyone involved. There are certain things that we're going to chase for, and I'm not going to disclose what that is, depending on the seriousness. We're going to chase people no matter what. And some things, like a moving violation, is like for a seatbelt or something. How much? What if you catch that person, or if you do the pit maneuver? What have you really gained for that person? What have you gained? Yeah, that's the pros and cons. And we have to answer what could happen, because that what could happen is usually a very bad situation. So we have to vet all of our decisions that we make, and it's not static. It's a very fluid. Every chase is a very fluid situation. Highway Patrol still does chase, but we have to ask ourselves, what are you willing to give to end that chase? What are you willing to jeopardize? We don't want to, number one, we don't want to jeopardize our own safety or the public's. So that has to we have to constantly reevaluate the situation when we're chasing somebody.
It's a constant, as you mentioned, fluid society. It's a constant fluid world. We're kind of coming up to the last year. I want to make sure if there's anything that you need to cover that we have missed. Obviously, there's a lot of information that we could talk about just with motor vehicle laws, but particularly as it relates to the holidays and safety. Anything that we've missed, I want to give you a few moments here to just discuss that. I
just want to say, whatever you're planning on doing this holiday season, just plan. Planning is essential. Me and my wife, we argue about this all the time. She's not a planner. She's kind of a fly by the seat of her pants kind of person. I'm a planner. I just like to have a plan in place. Don't always go as suspected, but I like to have a backup plan in place. So I tell people, always plan. If you're going to drink, have a safety net. Have somebody drive you there. Matter of fact, don't drive yourself there. Just have somebody take you there and come and pick you up. Think about the worst case scenario that could happen to you, and you should be fine. Always call a friend. Just think about these things ahead of time before you put yourself in a situation you can't get out of and you don't want to be in.
Absolutely, and I think the worst case is being standing in a courtroom in front of that judge after the holidays, facing a situation that involved injury or unfortunately death.
That's correct, yes sir.
So we've kind of come to the end. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank you for taking time. I also want to congratulate you for being moved up to sergeant right here in Clinton office. And salute to the North Carolina Highway Patrol, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday, each and every Tuesday at 2:30 on We Should Know. We'll see you again next week, and may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.